What's up, everybody? This is DnDnD. I am going to be doing a one-shot creation today for you all. It's going to be completely free. There is going to be a link to it in the description that you can take for free if you prefer, having a copy for yourself or visually, or if you just kind of don't like reading, you can just watch this video and kind of take notes or just memorize, use this as a guide. So either version is up to you for whatever you prefer. But yeah, let's get started. So this is a D&D one shot. You could do it probably for levels 1 through 5, just the stats if you like, of like the encounters and things like that. But yeah, let's get started with my D12 mug. Pretty cool, recommended. Not sponsored or anything, but still pretty cool. But anyway, so yeah, this is gonna be a one shot called the Woodland Hunters and Beasts, and the whole idea of it is I wanted like this kind of like unique encounter where eventually you'll see there's going to be a beast that is going to be completely invisible the entire encounter, and rather than like a deadly combat, which there will be one of those, this is going to be strictly kind of about finding the beast and kind of capturing it, or damaging it to 0 hit points. But it's going to be, that's the challenge, finding it. So I wanted to like a unique spin to this. So that's the whole idea, and they're gonna basically interview hunters, PCs, and have them join their team. So they get to kind of pick which hunter they want that will help them with that trapping. So we'll get into that eventually. So yeah, so basically with this one shot, it's going to just start with the PCs, being called to this adventure. They heard that there was, these attackings in this this town, and the forest ranger is asking for people to help them. So they find themselves in a cabin, waiting for the forest ranger to join them. And I just always like to have like a little intro like that in my piece with my PCs, just to get them to introduce their characters, have a little role playing if they want to. You can skip over whatever you don't like. But basically, I threw in a little scene that you can use. I always try to incorporate some kind of interaction in a room, in an opening room, so it's interesting, besides them just talking to themselves. So this room is filled with a bunch of beasts' heads that are like mounted on the wall, and the room's a little chilly, and they'll notice that you can kind of describe that it's chilly because the fire is dying, and there's a large stack of wood, right, logs. And if they are explorative, explorative, whatever, enough, they can feed the wood to the fire, and they'll find that the wood is magically infused, and they'll gain some temporary hit points. So little exploration, interaction. But also just take note if any of the PCs specifically look at the heads, and you can describe some of these heads, but that's going to be important for later. So what I'm doing in this adventure is kind of having moments throughout that if they took notice to certain things, that's going to help them at the very end of the adventure and the encounter, because it's going to give them an advantage, or they won't have a I guess like a nerf for the battle, which you'll see. So take note of that. So then eventually you can introduce the forest ranger, whose name I just came up with is Fair. She's a half elf. I'm sorry, he is a half elf male. So basically they come in, they explain, there's these attacks. They're looking for people to help take care of that. You can offer some kind of gold as reward if they feel like they need some kind of incentive or whatever else. But they also suggest that, when they're ready, they go into town, and they should get the help of some hunters that are in town. There's going to be 4 of them, and they need to pick one. There's going to be a nice little interaction, role-playing experience of getting to know all of them and picking which one they want. And the forest ranger will give them gold to pay for at least one. So that way they can only pick one, not all 4. So the forest ranger is responsible for telling them that, and also telling them to check out the latest scene, the attack scene. So there was somebody that was killed the night before, so check out that scene too. That's the 2 things here that they are informed to do. So then they go into town. You can just kind of describe a basic little town in like a little forest town. There's not much. There's just some houses, cabins basically. There's like a little farm, a medical cabin, and maybe just a tavern, right? So they can do any order they want. So they can either go see the attack scene, or they can go to where the hunters are. So let's just say they go to the attack scene first, give them that, independence or autonomy. So if they go there, they find that the cabin, is all kind of messed up, a mess. There is the dead body there, who is all clawed up, bleeding, right? So the PCs can kind of just check around to do some investigations checks if they're kind of describing that. So what the PCs can find is if they pass a DC 10 investigation check, they can kind of tell, like, this looks like, the wounds suggest that the person was attacked by some kind of beast, four-legged beast. So that's pretty clear just by the way of the wounds are on them. It looks kind of beast-like, right? If they roll really well, like a DC 17, they notice some fur from the beast that's lying, about. So that's important. So take note who is being investigated enough to allow a roll, and then take note of who passed these checks. Write this down. This is going to be important later too. And which ones they passed. Did they pass just one of them, or did they pass both of them? Cheers. Okay, my drink. All right, so next they can go see the hunters. So this is kind of the cool little role-playing interaction. So basically, you're going to have them be introduced to each of them, and then you're going to tell them after each I forgot to have some music. After each encounter with each of them, you can kind of explain, like, out of character, what the mechanical benefit of them is going to be, so they can actually choose which is the more meaningful one, or they can just pick which one they like more. So basically, we have 4 of them. So you have Beatrice and her dog, her hound, Spike. So Beatrice is a gnome, and she rides on her little hound. Basically, she is going to be helpful because the dog is going to help sniff out the beast. So we'll get into the specifics later, but this is just the general idea. They are able to kind of sniff out the beast. Next, you have a female tabaxi named Lucky. She has a net launcher, which is going to be able to shoot at the beast, and it tries to, restrain them. And then we have Leonard, a human male. He has these like magic kind of sound spikes, I'm calling them. Basically, they can put them into the ground. They cover a certain area, the radius. And if the beast enters into that radius, it's going to ring to give them an indication of where the beast is. Why this is important, which they don't know yet, is the beast is actually always invisible. So they don't know that, but this is what's going to make the challenge fun. And then lastly, we have Young, which is a male Earth Genasi. So basically, this guy can help trap the beast, sort of. So it's going to be able to rise the ground to the ceiling and kind of cut off its path, and kind of restrict where they can go. So that's just the 4 hunters, and they can choose just by that quick description of what sounds better. Again, we'll get into the mechanics later. I don't come up with like the personalities with all 4 of them. I'm going to leave that up to you. But yeah. So when they have the hunter selected, they are going to have to track the beast, and they can go right away and try to do a survival check to track the beast. The DC is going to start at 19, but it's suggested by the hunter probably that they should maybe look around town, try to investigate some things to get a better idea where the beast is going to be, or where they can start tracking the beast. So there's a couple things that they can do to lower that survival check. So first, if they haven't gone to the house where the victim was, they can check that out. Or maybe if they did, they can maybe already did visit, they can check it again, and maybe check maybe around the house, get a little bit more in depth. Or perhaps if they were investigative enough before, if they already went, they already found this clue. But basically, if they look outside, they can find paw prints if they do a investigation check. They don't really lead anywhere, but it gives them the understanding of what the beast's paw prints look like, which is going to help them in tracking later. So they have to do a DC check here. And that gives them a decrease to the eventual survival check, right? So it starts at 19, the survival check. It can be lowered by 2 if they happen to find that those paw prints by doing a DC 12 investigation check. All right. Then another thing they can do is if they somehow suggest having Spike the Hound, but this is only if they chose Spike and Beatrice the Hound as the hunter. If they suggest like, oh, we found that fur, if they found that, let's have them sniff out, the fur and try to track like that. It's really clever, smart. So it's limited if they're able to do that, or specific because they have to choose it and they have to pass that DC 17 check before. But if they do, it's going to really lower the survival check, the eventual survival check, by 6. So that helps even more. So they can do all of these if possible. And then the third one is if if all their rolls are not, if all failed, so they can do something to get a lowering of that DC survival check. Which is just kind of interviewing the townsfolk. So you can have people walking around, the town, at the farm. But there's 2 people that are important. There's going to be the roommate who is at the bar, the tavern. They're kind of distraught. They're drinking. They woke up, found their roommate dead. So they're going to be helpful to lead them to the other person who's helpful, the neighbor. So the neighbor is the ultimate person they want to talk to. So they might choose to talk to the neighbor right away. But if they don't, they can talk to the roommate who will lead them to the neighbor. And if they talk to anybody else, they can either really not be helpful, or they might suggest, you might want to talk to the roommate. So regular people will lead them to the roommate at the tavern, who will lead them to the neighbor. But depending on who they interview first, they might get to the neighbor first. So basically, the townspeople will not really give much information. They just direct them to the person at the tavern, which is the roommate. The roommate's gonna be kind of distraught, because kind of like shocked and muttering and just really drinking away the sorrow right now. Whose name is Trevor. He's a human male. And really, he's going to be doing is kind of muttering like, I should have listened to the neighbor. So they're not going to get much out of him, but he's going to keep muttering that eventually, through their dialogue. So that might tell the PCs like, the neighbor. Okay, let's go talk to the neighbor. So when they get to the neighbor, whose name is Della, a female elf, her personality is going to be kind of or her attitude is just going to have some sorrow for the loss of the neighbor. But eventually she's going to give them the information that like she has been hearing stuff at night. She's an elf, so she doesn't really sleep. She just meditates. And the last few nights she's been hearing things, and she warned Trevor, the roommate, that she's been hearing this. And basically Trevor paid no attention to her, which is why he was drinking and saying I should have listened. But basically, she's going to give the information of where she's been hearing this sound at night, and she can kind of point the PCs in that direction. And basically, the PCs will go there, and they'll see some foliage, and be kind of spreading, as if something. My cat's here; she's being loud. You might hear her. But basically, on the edge of town, there's some foliage and there's some spraying as if something came out of the woods, right? And that's going to give the PCs some more clues of like the direction of where the beast might be coming from and going to. So that's going to lower the survival check by 4. So once they're all ready and get all this information, or if they didn't get any information, you can ask them like, all right, you ready to track the beast? And they can do a overall survival check. So everybody will be doing that survival check, which is going to be set to 19 by default, or it could be lowered. I'm sorry, not everybody's going to be doing, just one person can do the survival check. Um, so depending if they pass or fail, if they pass, great. They find the lair, which is a cave that the beast is at. If they fail, they still find it, but it's like it took them a very long time. They're very tired and exhausted now. And now everybody has to do a Constitution saving throw, DC of 14. And if they pass, it means okay, they were able to truck through the long, travel and are okay. But if not, they got very tired from that long travel. And basically they have 2 points of exhaustion right now. So disadvantage on ability checks, not attack rolls, and their speed is halved. So basically I'm trying to give a little bit more of a challenge to the combat that's coming up right now. Unless they pass, no problem. Overall, not too crazy, just the speed's halved, So basically they get to this cave and they creep in and they see the silhouette of this legged beast. And as they kind of get a little bit closer, it notices them and it goes completely invisible right in that moment. And you can roll for initiative. So the beast automatically can have invisibility that doesn't go away. And it also has a lair action. So it's in its cave, which is its lair, and it's going to have a benefits because of that. And lair actions, which are in the stat block right here, just give it a advantage in battle. And it is kind of like a creature. If you've never seen lair actions, basically it goes initiative slot 20, probably at the top of the round, and basically just acts like a creature, but it's an action that helps the beast. So roll for initiative. Here are the stat blocks. Like I said, you can just use this in the description. There's a link. But basically what the beast does is it's invisible, so they can't see it. Disadvantage on attacks against it. And all that it does is runs away and it evades them. And it has some actions right here, 2 actions that basically kind of knock them over or stun them and like surprise them with like this roar that stuns them, and they can try to do some checks to get out of that. But basically it's just going to make them harder. Everything that it does is makes it harder for them to hit and attack the beast. So just very evasive, and it's all about trying to find the beast. That's the fun of this encounter. It's not about like trying to not die because it's not really attacking, but it's about trying to find it. So how they can try to find it is with the help of the hunters. So specifically, you are going to kind of set up a map that's kind of like a battleship. So like, A, B, C, D, D, E, F, 10 of those and then 10 down. So that way you can kind of keep track. Okay, my beast is at A4 right now. And then you move it. Okay, now it's at, D8, whatever. So keep track of it, but they don't know where it is. All right. So basically the hunters are going to help track it down. So Beatrice and Spike, the hound, the hunters, the PCs are going to decide what to do as a group. Except Beatrice and Spike are the only ones where you as a DM will have to do it, because what it does is it sniffs out the hunter, it sniffs out the beast. So it's going to go automatically to the quickest path to the beast, as long as it can make it there in its turn. It'll go as far as it can. And then once it's within range, it will always keep its distance by 20 feet. And what it does is it tells you where, the direction that it's facing is a 20-foot cone. So at the end of that 20 feet, there's those four slots, right? It's telling you it's sniffing it out, the beast. So it's in one of those 4 slots, that 20-foot cone. So at the end of the cone, the beast is there. It's saying, so it's sniffing it, it's right in that direction. So that tells everybody where the beast is. So they have 1 in 4 chance at that time, assuming that the beast, that they could make it to the beast in their turn with their movement. Lucky has a net launcher, so they can shoot that up to 60 feet. And the net, they can shoot, and if they can get to if they miss, and they can pick it up automatically on their turn, as long as they can walk there. So what is useful for that is you might not know where the beast is as easily as like Beatrice and Spike, but it covers a large area, 15 by 15. So you can have the PCs ask, where do you want to shoot the net? And if the beast is within any of that area, it's automatically wrapped up in the net and it's restrained. The beast can try to break out of that on its turn for its action. It can do an athletics check or acrobatics. DC 14. If they succeed, they're no longer restrained. If they aren't restrained, I'm sorry, if they fail, they continue to be restrained. And while they are restrained by the net, the PCs know exactly where it is, so there's no disadvantage on its attacks, on attacks against it. So it's basically like it's visible in that time period. So the beast can might be hard to find, but if you do, you're going to have a good chance of hurrying it really well. And I might, with this whole encounter, I might do something like you might, if they just shoot in blindly, where they might think where it is and they're just shooting blindly, the actual PCs now I'm talking about with their attacks, if they shoot a bow arrow, I might say like, if they shoot well enough, like it's above the monster's AC, I might say like, you're precise with your aim, that it's just not there. But if they shoot very poorly, like they rolled a 2, and they shoot a spot where the beast wasn't anyway, you might just say like, you can't even tell if the beast was there or not because of the bad aim. So you can have a little flexibility of how strict you want to be. You can even say if they shoot an arrow, you can even say the whole entire line doesn't hit the beast. If you want it to be a whole line, that's fine too, or whatever you want to do. So a little bit more flexibility there. Sorry, my voice is a little dry, my throat, so I'm going to take a drink. Okay, Leonard, this guy with the sound spikes. So as an action, and he can pick up these up for free if they put it down. So the action can place down a spike. The PCs can place up to 3 of them, 1 per action. So they choose where they want to put down spikes, and then each spike has a 20-foot radius. So then anytime the beast, where you control the beast, and you tell it, and it goes within a radius, you tell the PCs, this particular spike starts ringing, indicating that it's within its radius. So that's kind of cool. There can put 3 of them, so it can cover a large area, but it's just kind of limited. Okay, oh, he's in it, it rang, but are they still there? Where within that radius, so it helps, but it's not super precise. And then lastly, you have Jung. So this guy can lift the earth all the way up to the ceiling of the cave, or it could bring it back down to the earth. But basically, it's helpful to kind of trap the beast, and it could start 5 feet away from him and go up to 40 feet. Feel like that's not enough, you can lower it, increase it. But basically, as long as it's a continuous line, he can make any kind of shape or form or line. But basically, it's kind of meant to kind of trap the beast, or kind of cut areas off to make it smaller. So each turn it can do 40. I think that's probably a good amount, because each turn, right? So you might want to put the cave kind of like in half. So you say, okay, now we know it's on this side because it can't go over that side. So they can be a little strategic at how they want to try to trap the beast, yeah, so eventually they'll find the beast and lower its health to 0. And in this area, we're not going to have it die. What's just going to happen is it's going to become visible, and they're going to kind of see what this beast looks like officially. Excuse me. Sorry, hold on 1 second. I just got over a cold and my throat's still a little sore. Anyway, sorry. So at this point, where I was saying throughout this whole adventure, like, take note of when they pass certain things. So this is where it's going to come into handy. So basically, they're going to hopefully try to realize that, ooh, this is a female, and based on its docileness and how non-aggressive it is, it's not likely that this is the one that's been doing the attacks. That's probably a male, right? So they have to try to figure out that this is the female docile one. And therefore there is an aggressive male that's probably doing the attacks. And they can do that in one of three ways. So if they were able to pass that original DC 17 investigation check where they found the fur at the attack scene, they can see like, oh, this fur is slightly different. So they know it's a different beast, kind of, male versus female. If they noticed those beasts' heads at the very beginning of the first scene mounted on the wall, they'll see that they'll recognize like, hey, this beast that I'm seeing right now, it looks very similar to a beast I saw mounted on the mounted head on the wall, but that one must have been a male version because this looks slightly different. So they realize it there. So that one they get for free if they haven't noticed before. Or the last thing they can do is, this is good if nobody, or some of them noticed this, but some of them didn't. Some of them passed some of those checks and some of them didn't. So everyone has a chance to at least roll a nature check to get some kind of information, knowledge, if they realize just this it's a female versus male kind of thing. So that's a DC nature check, but that can be lowered to a DC 15 if they pass that DC 10 investigation check at the attack scene with the claw attacks on the victim and things like that. So that's where it's important. It's kind of cool. The PCs will like that, like, oh, like my past actions kind of mattered here. So realizing or passing those or doing those things gives them that understanding and information right now. Why that's important is this, because once they realize this, or if they don't realize this, they would say like, oh, this is a female, there must be a male. And in that moment they hear, oh, like a, and they turn to see that their hunter is like been stabbed by the male who just ambushes them. So the male woodland beast comes in and the hunter dies, and everybody has to roll for initiative. But here's the kicker: if they didn't pass any of those three criteria I just talked about, like noticing the mounted heads, the nature check. So if they didn't do any of those three, they are surprised. So they lose one round of the first combat round. So they're surprised, and they're also frightened. So if they did pass, they were at least somewhat prepared. They kind of knew that there was a male, but if they didn't, now they're like, oh, yikes, a male. So so they don't pass or have those three criteria. They are surprised first round, meaning they can't attack the first round, and they're also frightened for the rest of the combat, meaning that they can't approach them. And I believe they have disadvantage on attacks. Just look up the frame conditioned. But yes, but if they did meet those three criteria, they passed the DC 17 investigation check, noticing the fur, anything that made them realize that that there was a male, they are fine. They're not going to be affected by this. So that's where they'll feel kind of special and cool, like, oh yeah, I did those things in the past. I kind of helped myself by being investigated before. So they'll feel good about that. So yeah, now they have one last initiative combat. Here are the stats for that, where this one will actually try to attack. This one gets lair actions too, but this one doesn't turn invisible. It's just a normal combat. And the lair actions, which I meant to talk about before with the female, just basically kind of buff it a little bit, heal it, increase the AC, things like that. So once they defeat it, this one dies, and then they can decide what they want to do with the female. Maybe want to kill it, maybe want to take it into town, whatever they want to do. And lastly, they can go back into town, talk to Fair, the forest ranger, to get the reward, and this can set them up for another adventure, or they can just kind of retire these adventurers and just have a fun with the one shot, and that's it. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this one shot. Like I said, it's completely free. And just let me know if you run this and how it went. This is not play tested right now or anything like that, so I'd love to hear how it went. But I hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching.